What's up, everybody? Frank Valkyria. Welcome to the channel. I hope you're doing absolutely fantastic today. It's a good day, it's warm, drink your water, stay off the sun at least at noon because in the summer the sun can be heavy, alright? So wear a hat in case you have to go out. Alright, let's talk about this. Not many mainstream outlets are talking about the farmer here in Holland. I live in the Netherlands myself, in Amsterdam, so I'm seeing this a little bit more closely. Even though the video that we are watching right now, this seems to be Germany. Farmer from Germany as well. So, long story short, farmers, they are revolting a little bit against the government because the government here in the Netherlands is passing this law, wants to pass the law, it passed this law of cutting on nitrogen emission. And of course, this will affect the agriculture, probably mostly meat producers, cattle, dairy industry, because cows are supposed, like feed that they give cows and they digest, produce methane in the atmosphere. So they want to reduce in certain areas up to the 70% in some areas of the territory in the Netherlands. And of course, this is causing a lot of pain because farmers are pissed off. If you reduce them much, that means that a lot of those people, they probably have to close shop, right? So, all right, let's try to talk about this without, taking side, without too much conspiracy. Let's try to look at the facts and understand a little bit what the heck is happening. The supermarkets actually a few days ago were kind of half full or half empty, but now it seems it's getting back to normal. So the whole problem here is this. Now they're blaming the cows, right? It's all the cows' fault. How much of that is true? So I look into it briefly to see what it's out there in terms of science. And I was okay, this is just Google. Where are we? So it seems like already this is just a page from agriculture. I think it's from Australia, probably. I'm not sure, but they seem like this is something that it's well known. Methane is the main greenhouse gas producing grazing system, ruminant livestock, cattle, sheep, and goats. So they have microbes in their rumen called methanogens. These microbes produce methane from the fermentation of feed. So what they eat ferments and they produce methane. So I'm trying to look into scientific papers telling me how much this has an effect. And here we have a paper published already a while ago, actually, in the Canadian Science Publishing Journal of Animal Science. And those are the author here: A. Kalbreb, K. Clark, C. Wagner Riddle, and J. France. Publication Canadian Journal, okay, June 2006. Considerable evidence of climate change associated with emission of greenhouse gases (GHG) has resulted in international effort to reduce GHG emission. The agriculture sector contributes about 8% of GHG emission in Canada, mostly through methane, GH4, and nitrous oxide N2O, N2O oxygen. So, just briefly, this is Canada in 2006. I suppose things at least have stayed the same more or less, or worsened. So it's interesting, if you pull up the most polluted country in the world, and of course, by no surprise, you will see that China is the country that in 2020 seems to pollute the most in millions of tons of CO2 right here, right? So I suppose graphs like this, they include all type of pollution, which we're going to go on in a second to check that out, because like I said, I wanted to find out how much agriculture has this impact. The thing that is interesting here is that in those main countries, and it goes down pretty rapidly. Actually, China and the U.S. it's crazy. Also, India, Russia. Actually, already India, you would have expected much more pollution. Probably it's dirty in other ways. You know, like in terms of probably a lot of plastic produced. I think some areas they banned plastic also, plastic bags, because that's a real issue. But as you can see, like by far, China, of course, is basically the producer of goods of the world. So, and this includes probably transportation, agriculture, energy, everything. But you see, there is no Netherlands there. This is per capita. Interesting to see that, probably because it's related to consumption. Qatar, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, all the countries that probably have to rely on a lot of energy to, air conditioning, probably. Maybe also production of plastic, related to oil. Anyway, also interesting per capita. Here you don't see the Netherlands showing. So the interesting part is this, that the government here is going after the farmers, when in fact in the Netherlands doesn't have this huge impact, even though they probably have livestock, they export a lot, so on and so forth. But they don't seem to have like that kind of scale that perhaps the meat industry can have in the US to make a dent into reducing, perhaps, I don't know. So that they're going so heavy on the farmer here feels like a little bit like a gimmick, perhaps just to meet the quota that the UN has agreed upon, and the Netherlands wants to respect that. And they're going after the farmers because probably it's the easiest way they can cut. Because if you see like, all right, if you see like, I just try to very quickly pull up, and of course this is not updated 100% accurate perhaps, but I just pull up some info in regards of what is the most thing that pollutes, right? So here there's of course a list. First on the list is energy, second on the list is transport, third on the list is agriculture. So let's see energy, of course, what it entails. Energy has to do with production of, electricity. A lot of energy is produced also by coal. Still, a lot of also in China, there are coal, both mines and coal energy. How do you call it? Like factory or facilities. That they work on that. So they produce electricity. Sorry, sometimes the words they don't come. They produce electricity by burning coal. So not exactly the most practical, clean way of doing so, but together with production of other things, including also transformation of probably crude oil into plastics, which again produce a lot of pollution, and then also after the cycle of production produces even more pollution because we dispose of a gazillion, I don't know how much plastics all around the world. And also that has to be dismantled, treated, and disposed. And there are also, I'm not going to get into that too much, but there are even like, garbage is shipped sometimes in poor countries where it's supposed to be stocked or treated, just goes into landfills or whatever. We might get into that another time. But this is interesting, you see. So, of course, the main cause here, it's everybody driving a car, everybody flying in a plane, everybody using electricity that it's based on diesel, gas, whatever, produces a lot of pollution. So no surprise. You can stop and perhaps read some of the numbers here. I'm trying to go over it a little bit more quickly, but just to have a sense, if it makes sense what they're doing here in the Netherlands. So this graph is about spilling probably of oil accident that we had in the last 50 years. Likely has been reduced. I think in the 70s or 80s there were some major catastrophic event of some tankers, unfortunately, that probably had a big impact on those graphs. So by no surprise, of course, transportation then contributes over 20%. So Energy, I think, was 30%. See, 30% of greenhouse gases produced. And transport, it's like 20%. Of course, the two of them together, it's already 50%. Commercial freight, 40%. Passengers travel, 60%. I suppose is referring to aviation as well. Commercial freight, this is also probably including naval transportation, because I don't have the number in front of me, and you can call me out, please, but I'm pretty certain, because I worked on cargo ships, I'm pretty certain that a big ship that burns like really crude oil, like a type of, it's not like refined diesel, you know, like it's a little bit less refined diesel. That's probably why it's called crude oil. Bunker, we call it bunker. Now I forgot the specific name. But anyway, it's a very heavy, like combustible fuel, and it produces a lot of in the air, like really bad. So I'm pretty sure that one ship that is traveling 24 hours to do a crossing from China to here every day probably throws in the air the equivalent, I don't know how many freaking cars, but I'm pretty certain of it. So maritime transportation also has a big impact on that. But of course, people have to travel, and goods have to travel, right? Including sometimes vegetables and cheese and other stuff from other countries that come from far, refrigerated and so on and so forth. And here we go, we get to agriculture, that it seems to have like in between a 13 and 18% of greenhouse gas emission in mainly nitrous oxide and methane. And remember, methane was the production of the fermentation of the digestion of ruminant, right here, enteric fermentation, which is referring to stock. So it seems like that the first on the list of agriculture is in fact the cattle, right? So to say that has absolutely no contribution, that would be also inaccurate. And but the problem stays here, which I was reading also, that there are also ways of reducing this enteric fermentation by giving better feed to the animals. To my knowledge, and again, you can call me out on this, I worked on a cargo ship, and we went to Canada to take soy. I remember one time I was on this ship, we literally loaded this. Ironically, one time we had to bring coal. We brought coal from Canada, from Vancouver, to actually here in IJmuiden, 80,000 ton of coal for energy. And then again we went on Canada on the east coast. We washed the holds. We had 7 holds. And we washed them well. It was one of the worst days. I was suddenly black. Felt like that 2 weeks I was working in a mine. But we cleaned the holds. We went to Canada, and I think was in the streak there, passing Quebec or something. Was it St. Vincent Bay? I don't remember. But we went into this actually very beautiful area. There were silos. We loaded 80,000 ton of soy. And this soy, we knew that was not for human consumption. This 80,000 ton of soy was for cattle feeding, right? So there is that. There is that in conjunction also with the fact that a lot of agriculture land that it's used for soy, what I mean is that the majority of the land that it's used for agriculture, it's actually used for agriculture to produce feed for the meat industry. Because for feeding as human, we require way less land than, creating feed for the billions of animals that every, month they have to eat, and they get slaughtered every day or every week. It's incredible numbers, actually. So there is that. There are definitely things that probably we can do in terms of society in general. Now, not pointing the finger. This is Italy, by the way. Similar thing is happening. And I'm telling you this. I am on the side of, the farmers, because they cannot be just the first to pay the consequences of a capitalist system that everybody has benefited on, including the government that got taxes from those people and so on and so forth. So there must be ways of helping also, if that's really a concern for the government, to help businesses transition, perhaps with fund, I don't know, perhaps with subsidies. Because at the end of the day, I'm also pretty sure that farmers, they don't care too much about having 600 cows or 350 as long as they can make a living, right? Because they got used to that amount of production and income and so on and so forth, and probably investment they had to do to grow and to stay, viable. So I feel like it's unfair to point the finger at the farmers here in Holland, when also in fact it's a country that doesn't seem to have this huge impact anyhow, despite the fact that, you know, cattle or cows and agriculture has this 13-18% impact on gas emission globally. You know, I don't know which country is more. Most likely is going to be probably China and the US as well, because the US meat industry is giganormous, and I suppose probably also in China it must be way larger than it can ever be here. So to be this radical that in some areas they want to cut to 70% of nitrogen in the air, when in fact the Netherlands is also quite a clean country, seems to me quite a big exaggeration. So like I said, without going too much into conspiracy theories and whatnot, the question remains for us, like, what can we do, for instance, as consumers, to maximize, or to maximize the efficiency of production, and that perhaps it's important. That's an important conversation, because in the end of the day, there is also, for instance, a lot of food that is produced only to end up in the garbage. There is so much waste, especially in the Western world. There is so much waste of food that is produced and it never ends up on the table of somebody. Literally expires and the supermarkets, they throw it out. There is so much waste in, fruit and vegetables, grain, meat, fish, poultry, and you name it. So perhaps we should also have a conversation on how to make, the whole line more efficient, and also ourselves start to be a little bit more conscious, perhaps. I'm not saying you have to cut down of, I'm not telling you what you should eat or whatever, but it does bring the question whether or not we do have a chance to, make a difference with our own action, or at least be aware of our action, also what they cause. You know what I mean? So to me, this is what I take personally out of this whole thing for the Dutch farmer. Mostly I think is unjustified, because of the scale of the industry here in a country that it's already pretty clean. Again, I'm not saying that green acid, the methane doesn't have absolutely no impact, but to go after the farmer when in fact the energy and transportation are the biggest culprit seems also hypocritical a little bit, right? And again, also in those, we have to sort of we say passare la mano sulla coscienza. We have to pass the hands on our conscience, we say in Italian, like to see we as a consumer also in the way we use the car, in the way we use our home, the way we spend, the way we dispose of plastic and so on and so forth, in larger scale, what impact we have as well. So I guess there is space for improvement, but to go after the farmer right now, especially here, seems totally absurd. Like I said, without even going too much into political speculation or whatever, but to me seems a little bit absurd, honestly. So guys, let me know your thoughts on this. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like, and if you have more information, you want to share scientific papers or whatever, you know that I like those things. I like to read into it. So thank you so much, and please subscribe. I'll talk to you later.